Welcome to Whisper's Secrets, where the most intimate mysteries come to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a secret. Now, let's pull back the veil. The first time I realized something was wrong wasn't when I found the house half empty or when I saw the dust marks on the wall where her paintings used to hang. It wasn't even the open drawer in the hallway missing every scarf she owned, or the untouched breakfast on the table that morning, cold eggs, unbuttered toast, and a coffee mug that still held the steam from our last shared silence. No. The first time was when I heard the knock at the door. 3 sharp taps, too urgent to be friendly, too rehearsed to be panicked. I stood there in my kitchen, my hand still wrapped around a fork that hadn't made it to my mouth, and I knew, instinctively, the world on the other side of that door was about to shift in ways I couldn't prepare for. I opened the door and saw my neighbor, Chris, standing there with a look on his face I'd never seen before. We'd been living next to each other for 7 years. He was a man of few words and even fewer facial expressions, always composed, always cordial. That morning, however, he looked like someone who had just seen a ghost rip through a church. "Eli," he said, and his voice cracked around my name like it didn't want to come out. "I think you should come outside. Right now." I didn't ask why. I followed. It was bright outside, one of those early spring mornings where the air still bites but the sun tricks you into thinking summer's already begun. The street was quiet except for the rumble of a truck engine. No, not just a truck. A moving van. Parked in front of my house. 2 men were hauling out what I immediately recognized as my grandmother's oak dresser, the same one Mara had insisted we keep in the master bedroom because old things hold stories. They were moving it like it was just a chunk of furniture, no reverence, no care. I took 3 steps forward, confused but calm, like my brain hadn't caught up to my body yet. Then I saw her. Mara stood on the porch, clipboard in hand, not watching me, not even glancing in my direction. She was giving directions. She wore that same burgundy coat I bought her last Christmas, the one she said she'd never wear because it made her feel too noticed. Her hair was tied back in that no-nonsense ponytail she always wore when she was focused, calculating. Her voice was calm, controlled, distant. She was listing items. Bedroom furniture. Paintings. 3 boxes labeled studio. None of them sounded like they belonged to me. And yet they were all mine. I didn't say her name. I didn't storm up the porch or shout or throw my fists into the air like some outraged movie husband. I just stood there, breathing through my nose, trying to process the shape of this betrayal. The 2 movers brushed past me without a word, as if I were just another piece of scenery in their day. My neighbor took a step back like he was embarrassed to have seen this, like he wished he could dissolve into the sidewalk. Finally, Mara turned to me. There was no surprise on her face. No panic. Only a flicker of something I couldn't quite name, relief, maybe. "Eli," she said, her tone so casual it made my chest tighten. "I was hoping you wouldn't be home this early." I blinked. "What is this?" She gave a faint, almost apologetic smile. "I'm leaving." My eyes darted between her and the van. "I can see that. I didn't want it to be dramatic," she added, her fingers tightening on the clipboard. "I didn't think it needed to be." I laughed. A hollow, humorless sound. "Stealing half the house without telling me, yeah, that's the opposite of dramatic." "I'm taking what's mine," she replied coolly, and those 4 words cracked something in me. Not anger. Not grief. Just confusion. We'd been married for 11 years. We shared closets, secrets, morning routines, stupid inside jokes about cereal brands. We built this life together piece by piece. And now she was dividing it like assets in a bankrupt business. "Who's the guy?" I asked before I could stop myself. Because there was always a guy. People don't dismantle their entire lives for solitude. There's always someone waiting on the other end of the risk. She hesitated. Then, Daniel. The name hit me like a cold glass of water in the face. Daniel was her ex from college. The one who wrote bad poetry and smoked cigarettes he couldn't afford and once told her, at a party I wasn't invited to, that she was too infinite to be contained by one man. I'd always hated him in the abstract. Now I hated him in the flesh. He's back in town, she said softly. He reached out a few months ago. A few months? I repeated, my voice climbing a step. You've been planning this for months? She didn't answer that. Instead, she turned to the movers. Careful with that one. It's fragile. I don't remember walking back into the house. I just remember the air changing around me, the way the walls felt suddenly unfamiliar, like they were shrinking away from my touch. I went to our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, and saw the space where her dresser used to be, a clean rectangle of carpet that still smelled faintly of her lavender sachets. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at nothing. Outside, the truck beeped as it backed up. The sound felt like a countdown to something I hadn't agreed to be part of. I stayed in that position until the sun began to fall behind the rooftops. When I finally stood, the house felt different. Not empty. Not yet. Just wounded. Like it was trying to understand what had just happened as much as I was. Then the doorbell rang. Not her again. Not Chris. Someone else. I opened it and found Leah, our daughter, standing on the porch with a backpack slung over one shoulder and her phone in her hand. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. So, she said, Mom finally did it. I stared at her. You knew? She nodded slowly. She told me a while ago. Said she didn't want to leave without saying goodbye to me. Said I could decide who I wanted to live with. And you chose her. I said, not as a question but as a bitter confirmation. No, she replied quietly. I chose neither. I want to stay with Grandma for a while. I felt something crack inside my chest. You think I'm just going to let you walk away too? Her eyes softened, but she didn't move. I think we all need time to figure out who we are without each other. I stepped back and let her in. She walked past me without another word, without even looking around. She grabbed a few things from her room, her sketchbook, a hoodie, a few books. Then she hugged me. It was quick, awkward, like she didn't know if she was allowed to. I didn't stop her. I didn't hug her back. When she left, I stood in the doorway long after her figure disappeared down the street. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't losing Mara. It was the quiet erosion of the idea of us, the realization that I'd been the last to know, the last to leave, the last to accept that it was already over. That night, I found the envelope. It was tucked inside the drawer of her nightstand, sealed and addressed to me. No decoration. No flourish. Just my name in her familiar, controlled handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I poured myself a glass of something strong and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope like it might change if I looked long enough. Then I opened it. Eli. I know you're angry. I would be too. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I do need you to understand something. This wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reckless. It was slow, like watching paint peel, or the tides slowly eating away at the shoreline. I loved you. I truly did. But I stopped being in love with you somewhere along the way, and I don't know when or how, and I hate myself for not being able to stop it. Daniel isn't the reason. He's just the timing. The reason is that I couldn't keep pretending we were okay when I felt like I was vanishing inside my own skin. I tried to talk to you, Eli. I tried more times than you realized. But you were always working, or tired, or distracted. And I stopped trying. And that was the beginning of the end. You didn't deserve this. You didn't deserve to be left like this. But I didn't know how to do it any other way without unraveling. I'm sorry. Mara. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and read the letter twice, then a third time, as if some alternate version of it might appear if I looked hard enough. But the words never changed. Mara was gone. And all that was left were the things she didn't take: the couch we picked out on a rainy Saturday, the broken lamp we always said we'd replace, the wedding photos still hanging above the fireplace. And me. Just me. sitting in the hollow shell of a life I didn't see crumbling until the dust was already on the floor. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I sat at the edge of the bed with the letter beside me, reading it over again and the faint light coming through the blinds. I memorized it. Every sentence. Every pause. Every cruel softness she tried to hide inside phrases like, "I loved you," and "I'm sorry." The sun rose slowly, staining the walls with gold that didn't warm anything. I hadn't realized until then how much noise Mara used to make in the mornings. The kettle, the squeak of the bathroom door, her heels tapping across the hardwood. Now, there was nothing. Just the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the wind pressing gently against the windows, as if it, too, was trying to decide whether to stay or leave. Around noon, I started cleaning. It wasn't conscious at first. I think I just needed something to touch, something to lift, something to put back where it belonged. I scrubbed the kitchen counter until the marble lost its shine. I gathered every hairpin, scarf, and crumpled receipt I could find and threw them all in a cardboard box labeled simply "Her." I changed the sheets. Not because they were dirty, but because they smelled like her shampoo. I took down the wedding photo. That was the only thing I didn't box. I just turned it around so the image faced the wall. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Not yet. Maybe not ever. By the time night fell, I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. My body felt drained, but my mind wouldn't slow down. I lay on the couch with a blanket over me like a patient refusing anesthesia. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I heard was a knock at the door. For a moment, still thick in the fog of half-sleep, I thought maybe she had come back. Maybe she'd realized something. Maybe there had been a mistake. But the knock came again, sharp and patient. When I opened the door, it wasn't Mara. It was Daniel. He didn't look how I remembered him. Back in the old photos, he'd been lean and smug with that soft artist scruff and a wardrobe that tried too hard. Now he was older, broader in the shoulders, a little more worn. But the eyes? The eyes were the same, like he was always waiting for someone to compliment his pain. He didn't wait for an invitation. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the same numb detachment that lets you watch a house burn down when you know the insurance is already sorted. He walked into the living room and stopped, hands in his pockets. He looked around like he was trying to map the version of my life he had helped break. "It's quieter than I expected." I didn't respond. He turned to me. "I know I'm the last person you want to see." "That's not true," I said flatly. "I don't want to see either of you." He flinched, just barely. "Fair. I'm not here to justify anything. But I thought you should know, Mara's not doing as well as she pretends." I crossed my arms. "And you thought I'd care?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I get it. I was the villain. I am the villain. But I didn't plan this. I didn't seduce her, or chase her, or lure her away. She came to me. And for a while I thought it was right. That maybe we'd both been given a second chance at something. And now?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. He hesitated. "Now I think she ran from something she didn't understand instead of fixing what she could have. She thought you stopped seeing her. But the truth is, she stopped letting herself be seen." I looked at him, really looked. For the first time, I saw the guilt under his skin, the uncertainty crawling through his words like a shadow that never left. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she won't," he said. "She's too proud. She thinks disappearing is easier than confessing she might have been wrong." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "She asked me to give you this. I told her not to send it. That it wouldn't help. But she insisted. I took it. Didn't open it." He stood there a second longer, like he wanted me to say something. I didn't. "Take care of yourself," he said. Then, with a final glance around the room, he left. When the door clicked shut, I stood in the silence that followed and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not pain, not even anger. Just exhaustion. Heavy and slow, like trying to swim in wet cement. I sat down, turned the envelope over in my hands. It was thin, unsealed, her handwriting on the front again, for when you're ready. I didn't open it. I slipped it into the drawer with the first letter and closed it. The next day, I called my mother. She lived across town, in the house I grew up in. We hadn't spoken since Mara left. She texted, called, even emailed once. I ignored all of it. But now I needed something. Not comfort. Not advice. Just contact. Proof that not everyone had vanished. She picked up on the second ring. Eli? Her voice cracked like she'd been waiting for this call with a loaded heart. Yeah, I said quietly. There was a long pause. Then she said, come for dinner. No questions. I went. Her house was the same, warm, full of mismatched throw pillows and the smell of garlic and rosemary. She hugged me like she was afraid I'd dissolve. I didn't hug her back right away. But when I did, something inside me shifted. We didn't talk about Mara. Not until after dinner, when the plates were cleared and we sat on the porch watching the sky bleed into night. She left you, my mother said finally, her voice gentle. Yeah, I said. She's not the first person to leave someone who loved them. I looked at her. Dad? She nodded. He left before you were old enough to remember. I told you he died. It was easier than explaining abandonment to a 5-year-old. I stared at the stars. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I didn't want you to grow up angry. I didn't respond. But I thought about it for a long time after. The weeks passed in strange rhythms. I started going back to work. Half days at first, then full. I stopped checking my phone every morning. Stopped waiting for a knock that never came. I filled my time with structure, with the comfort of predictability. But inside, something still felt unanchored, like I was walking through my life wearing someone else's shoes. One Saturday, I drove upstate to a cabin we used to rent every fall. Alone. I brought a notebook, a few books, and a bag of groceries. No phone. No laptop. Just space. It was the silence that got to me. Not the quiet of solitude, but the kind that lives between heartbeats, in the pause between one thought and the next. I sat on the porch for hours, just breathing. And for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not from grief. Not from loss. But from sheer release. The kind of cry that feels like exorcism. When I came back, I opened the second letter. Eli. If you're reading this, maybe you're not as angry anymore. Or maybe you are. I wouldn't blame you. I don't know if I made the right choice. Some days I think I did. Other days I feel like I tore something beautiful apart just to prove I could. Daniel was never the destination. He was just the signpost I convinced myself pointed toward freedom. But freedom without understanding is just loneliness in disguise. I thought you stopped loving me. But the truth is, I stopped loving myself, and I projected it onto you. I'm sorry. For everything. Not because I want you back. Not because I expect forgiveness. But because you were good. And I broke that. Take care of your heart. Mara. I folded the letter and placed it back in the drawer. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel closure. But I felt calm. And that was enough, for now. Some changes happen slowly, so gradually you don't even notice them until one day your shirt fits differently or your morning coffee doesn't taste like home anymore. Others arrive like lightning, in a flash that leaves the room intact but sets the foundation smoldering. I thought I was rebuilding. Brick by careful brick. Waking up earlier, exercising, eating actual food again instead of peanut butter and cigarettes. But the truth is, I was holding my breath, not healing. Waiting for something. A word, a gesture, a sign. I just didn't know it until the invitation came. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just finished my first full month back at work, no early leave, no counselor visits, No avoiding the team briefings by pretending I had. Phone calls. The routine helped. It gave my mind something to grip while my emotions floated somewhere too deep to reach. I came home to a plain white envelope slipped halfway through the door. No stamp. No sender. I assumed it was another letter from Mara. Part of me even braced for it. I opened it without ceremony and found an invitation, handwritten, like a relic from another century. Eli. I know this is strange. I know I'm the last person you probably want to hear from, and I wouldn't blame you for burning this before you finish reading. But I hope you don't. I'm hosting a small exhibition in 2 weeks. It's nothing formal, just a gathering in a small space I've rented to display a new series I've been working on. They're not about you. But they are because of you. There will be no speeches. No press. No performance. Just art and maybe some wine. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for conversation. I'm simply asking, if you come as someone who wants to look forward, not back. The address is below. Either way, thank you for seeing me once. Mara. There was no flourish. No manipulation. The handwriting trembled in places. She'd written it fast, probably all at once, before she had time to reconsider. I held the invitation for a long time. Then I set it on the table and walked away. I didn't look at it again for days. The night before the exhibition, I found myself standing at my closet like a man trying to solve an equation. None of my clothes looked right. Some felt too casual. Others too deliberate. Eventually, I picked a gray button-down I hadn't worn since the last time Mara and I went out together, some fundraiser for a friend's studio. She had told me I looked quietly dangerous in it. I didn't know what that meant then. I still don't. The gallery was small, tucked between a bookstore and an old bakery that smelled like burned sugar and nostalgia. I parked a block away. Stood outside for a full minute before walking in. Inside, the room was dimly lit, with soft lighting that made the white walls glow. There were no chairs. No stage. Just the artwork, 10 pieces in total, spaced evenly across the walls. People moved slowly between them, wine glasses in hand, murmuring thoughtfully. The air smelled faintly of paint and rosemary, like memory itself. And then I saw her. Mara stood at the far end of the gallery, talking quietly with a woman I didn't recognize. Her hair was shorter now, just above the shoulders, and dyed darker. She wore no jewelry, no makeup except for the faintest trace of color on her lips. She looked older. Tired. Real. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She didn't rush. She simply nodded, as if to say, "Thank you for showing up." Then she returned her attention to her guest. That was it. No drama. No grand gesture. I walked the room slowly. The paintings were all done in a similar style, abstract but emotive, with sweeping curves and soft edges, almost like sound waves caught mid-echo. The third piece stopped me cold. It was a series of layered brush strokes in deep gray and pale green, like moss on concrete. A dark shape in the center, barely human, barely there, seemed to dissolve outward. The title, written in tiny letters beneath the frame, "The Man Who Watched Himself Vanish." I stared at it for a long time. Something about the shape, the silence inside the piece, echoed a part of me I hadn't dared name. I didn't realize Mara had approached until she was next to me. "That one," she said softly, not looking at me, "was the hardest to finish." I didn't reply. She let the silence settle. "I started it the week I moved in with Daniel," she continued. "He never asked me why I painted at night. I think he thought it was passion. It was panic." Still, I said nothing. I didn't know how to respond to this new version of her, so gentle with truth, so absent of defense. "He left," she said eventually. I looked at her then. "Why?" She smiled sadly. "Because I stopped being the woman who needed saving. And he didn't know what to do with someone who was simply trying to breathe." I nodded, slowly. "Ironic." "I'm sorry," she said, not for the first time. "I know." I don't expect anything from you. I know that too. We stood there a while longer, two people surrounded by fragments of a story either of us wanted to rewrite. Then I walked away. I didn't look back. The next morning, there was a knock on my door. I half expected it to be her again. Some follow-up, some closure she forgot to script. But it wasn't. It was Leah. My daughter hadn't visited in weeks. She stood on the porch in jeans and a hoodie, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her expression hesitant. "Hey," she said. "Hey. Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. She walked into the living room, looked around like she was cataloging the changes. Noticed the turned-around wedding photo, the half-filled bookshelf, the clean kitchen counter. "I went to Mom's gallery last night," she said, sitting on the arm of the couch. "You were there, right?" I nodded. "She told me she saw you." I waited. "She's different now," Leah said. "I don't mean better or worse. Just clearer." I sat across from her. "And you?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I think I was mad at both of you for a long time. Mom for leaving. You for not stopping her." "I couldn't," I said quietly. "I know that now." We sat in the quiet for a while. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook. "I've been drawing again." She handed it to me. Inside were sketches, mostly landscapes, some portraits, a few abstracts. But on the final page was a pencil drawing of me, sitting on the porch, coffee mug in hand, staring at nothing. It was raw, imperfect, achingly honest. "I drew it the day after she left," she said. "You looked still. Not peaceful. Just like the world had stopped moving and you were the only thing left untouched." I closed the notebook gently. "Thank you. I think I want to come home," she said, almost in a whisper. I looked up. "I mean, just for a while," she added. "To see what home even feels like anymore." I nodded. "The door's always open." She smiled, and for the first time in months, it didn't look forced. That night, I started painting again. Not sketches. Not fragments. A full canvas. Blank at first, mocking me with its potential. But then I dipped the brush and let my hand move. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just let it happen. The piece was dark, at first, blues and grays, the color of silence and bruised memories. But then gold. And red. And orange. Not in streaks. Not chaotic. Just light peeking through cracks I hadn't realized I was allowed to open. When it was done, I titled it Survived. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming of her voice. The days that followed were quieter, but not in the empty way they used to be. The silence had changed its shape. It was no longer something I feared, just a backdrop now, like canvas behind paint. I wasn't healed. I wasn't whole. But the bleeding had stopped, and that was enough to start living again. Leah moved back in the following week. She didn't bring much, a few bags, her laptop, a small ceramic frog she'd made in 3rd grade and insisted still had vibes. The house changed immediately. Not just in sound or smell, but in rhythm. The kitchen hummed again. The front door creaked at odd hours. Music came from under her bedroom door. She cooked once, something vaguely Italian that set off the smoke detector, and we laughed so hard, I forgot what month it was. It wasn't a return to the past. It was something new, unshaped and fragile, but ours. We didn't talk about Mara much. Leah mentioned her sometimes in passing, like you mention the weather or the name of an old friend you still think about sometimes. She didn't ask about the exhibition. I didn't bring it up. It hung between us like a portrait no one wanted to hang but also didn't want to hide. One evening, she came into the living room while I was reading. Sat on the arm of the couch again, the way she always did when something was brewing. "She called," she said. I closed the book. "When?" "This morning." She asked how I was. Asked if I wanted to visit. I told her maybe. I waited. She also asked about you. I raised an eyebrow. What did she say? She asked if you were seeing anyone. I told her I didn't know. I looked away. That was generous. I wasn't trying to protect her, Leah said. I just didn't know how to explain what you are right now. I smiled at that. What am I? She tilted her head, thoughtful. Stillness with a pulse. That made me laugh. Is that a compliment? I think so. I saw Mara again 2 weeks later, by accident. Grocery store. We both reached for the same jar of marinara sauce, and there it was, one of those cliché moments from a bad rom-com, except instead of laughter and longing, there was only hesitation. She pulled her hand back. You first. I took the jar, nodded. Thanks. You look better, she said. I gave a soft shrug. I feel less broken. She smiled faintly. That's good. We stood there for a few seconds, the shelf between us and the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like dust on old furniture. How's Leah? She asked. She's good. She's painting again. That's good, she repeated. Silence. Then, I think I'm leaving the city. I looked at her. Where to? I don't know yet. Somewhere smaller. Somewhere slower. I need to start from zero. I nodded. Do you think that helps? I think it's easier to rebuild when you're not standing in the ruins. We stared at each other for a long beat. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper. I was going to mail this. I took it. Another letter? No, she said. Just something you might want to see. She didn't explain. Just nodded and walked away. No tears. No theatrics. I finished shopping with the paper still in my coat pocket. I didn't look at it until I got home. It wasn't a letter. It was a contract. A document releasing any shared legal claims to the house. No demands. No strings. Just her signature already at the bottom. All it needed was mine. It took me 2 days to sign it. When I did, I mailed it without a return address. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. The next few months moved like water. Days blending into each other with quiet momentum. I picked up a side project through a friend, consulting on a community arts center renovation. It wasn't exciting, but it was grounding. I found myself driving more, listening to music I hadn't touched in years. I deleted every old photo on my phone. Not out of bitterness. Just to make room. Leah got accepted to a summer program in Vermont. Her eyes sparkled when she told me, and though something twisted in my chest at the thought of her being gone again, I smiled. You should go, I said. Don't think twice. She hugged me before I even finished the sentence. When I dropped her off at the station, she kissed my cheek and said, Don't burn the house down. I said, Only the kitchen. And only by accident. For a while, I was alone again. But it didn't feel the same. The loneliness wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, bearable. Like a coat you wear because it still fits, even if it's not your favorite. I spent more time outside. I started running again. I finally fixed the porch light that Mara used to complain about every winter. And one day, I painted something without naming it. No theme. No idea. Just movement and breath and color. It felt like finally exhaling after holding it in for a lifetime. That same week, I got a message. Not from Mara. From Daniel. A simple email, no flair. Eli. I'm not going to pretend we're ever going to be friends. I wouldn't want that if I were you. But I wanted to say thank you for not punching me that day. I saw your piece in the online gallery. Survived. It's stunning. It made me sit down. Whatever you're doing now, keep doing it. Daniel. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. 2 months later, I opened my own gallery night. It wasn't big. A collaboration with a local space that supported community artists. I displayed 6 pieces. Not one of them was about Mara. Not one of them had titles about silence or heartbreak or ghosts. They were about mornings. Renewal. Light. I called the collection What Remains. The crowd wasn't huge, But it was honest: students, neighbors, a few strangers who wandered in because they saw the lights and the doors were open. I saw Chris, my neighbor, standing in front of one of the pieces. He looked over, raised his glass, and said, "Told you that studio had good bones." He was right. The old studio, the one Mara used to use, was mine now. I had renovated it. Reclaimed it. Not as a shrine to memory, but as a workshop for what comes next. That night, standing in that room, I realized something I hadn't dared say out loud. I was no longer the man she left. And I didn't want to be. A week later, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just an image of a coastal town, cliffs, waves, sky so blue it looked like it had been dyed. The back had a single sentence. "Thank you for letting go before I knew how." I didn't need a signature to know who it was from. I pinned the postcard above my desk. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. Sometimes, love ends not because it dies, but because it needs to go somewhere else to survive. It's strange how, in the end, it's not the shouting or the crying or the leaving that defines a story, it's the quiet afterward. The kind of quiet that doesn't echo with what was lost, but breathes gently with what remains. That's how I knew this was the final chapter, not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing did. No breakdown. No relapses. Just calm. I stopped waiting for someone to knock. Stopped rehearsing conversations in my head that would never happen. I stopped reading the old letters. I didn't throw them away. Some things you keep, not because you need them, but because they were once real. But I tucked them into a drawer I no longer opened. Spring melted into summer, and the house felt fuller even when I was alone. The air moved differently. I noticed the way light curved across the living room at 5:30 p.m., how the neighbor's wind chime hummed a different tune after storms. I drank my coffee slower. Took longer walks. I wasn't looking for anything. And maybe that's why something found me. It came in the form of a conversation at a local arts center. I was there delivering a commissioned piece for their garden installation, an abstract, weatherproof steel form that looked like a fractured sunrise. A woman approached me after the curator introduced us. Her name was Helen, and she had that kind of smile people only wear when they're used to being underestimated. "I saw your last exhibition," she said. "The one with the paintings about light. Not about heartbreak?" I asked with a smirk. "No," she said. "That was the one before. The heartbreak was louder. This one was quieter. More honest." I liked her instantly. We talked for 20 minutes, mostly about colors and texture and how art sometimes says what language can't. She didn't ask about my past. I didn't ask about hers. There was no pressure. No flirtation. Just recognition. Two people who had lived through their own fires and somehow learned to breathe through the smoke. Before she left, she handed me a card. "If you ever want to visit my studio, we do collaborative nights every Thursday. No pressure. Just paint, music, and good soup." I went the next week. And the one after. We didn't become a love story. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we became something better than silence. We became possible. Leah returned from Vermont in late August. Taller somehow. Freckles from the sun. Her laugh was different, less performative, more certain. She brought back a sketchbook full of layered ink drawings that told stories without dialogue. She hugged me longer than usual when I picked her up at the station. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded against my shoulder. "I'm better than okay." That night, she sat beside me on the porch and watched the sunset paint the sky like it had somewhere to be. "Mom called," she said. I waited. "She's living near the coast now. Says the sound of the waves makes her feel less like a mistake." I didn't say anything. "She's doing therapy," Leah added. She said it out loud. "Which means it's real." "Good," I said. "She also said she doesn't expect anything from us. Just wanted me to know she's trying." That was enough. I didn't need more. Leah sipped her lemonade. "I told her you were painting again. That you smiled more now." I raised an eyebrow. Do I? Not a lot. But when you do, it's real. That made me smile. That weekend, I visited my father's grave. It wasn't something I'd planned. Just felt right. He was buried in a quiet spot near a line of trees that kept the sun away in the afternoons. I hadn't been there in years. Maybe decades. I stood over the stone and said nothing for a long time. Eventually, I spoke. Mom told me the truth. The wind moved through the trees like breath. You left. And I grew up thinking you died. I grieved someone who chose to vanish. I sat on the grass, elbows on knees, eyes scanning the carved letters that meant less now than they ever had. I used to think I'd never forgive you. That abandoning someone was the worst thing a person could do. That I'd never be that man. Silence. But I understand it now. Not condone. Not excuse. Just understand. I took a deep breath. And I made sure I wasn't like you. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. I stayed. Even when she left. Then I turned and walked away. The last painting I completed that fall was different. It didn't have a title. Didn't need one. It was all motion, wide arcs, gentle intersections, a spiral at the center that seemed to pulse even when the room was still. Leah stared at it for 10 minutes without saying a word. Then she looked at me. Are you done with this story? I knew what she meant. Yes, I said. I am. A year after Mara left, I received a letter. Not a postcard. Not a text. A real letter. Long handwritten. Eli. I wasn't going to write this. I've told myself 100 times that the kindest thing I could do was disappear for good. That you deserved clean ground, not footprints from a past that wouldn't let go. But healing is strange. Sometimes it gives you permission to return to a place not to live again, but to honor that you once lived there at all. I am sorry. Still. But not in the way I used to be. Not from shame or guilt or begging. I'm sorry because I broke something beautiful out of fear, and fear is never a good enough reason. I want you to know, I see you now. Fully. Not as a man I left, not as a husband I failed, but as someone who kept breathing when I stopped. Thank you for the life we built. Thank you for not becoming bitter. Thank you for raising our daughter with grace, even when your heart was collapsing. I hope someday our paths cross again, not as unfinished business, but as people who once shared something rare and then chose to grow beyond it. With all the respect I never said aloud. Mara. I folded the letter and placed it with the others. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. Some words are meant to be heard once and carried quietly forward. In November, I held another gallery night. This one was different. More people. More light. More joy. The final piece hung in the center, surrounded by nothing. A spotlight caught its edges just right. I called it Returning. It showed two paths curving around each other, not colliding, not dividing. Just existing side by side, like rivers that once shared a source. Helen came. So did Chris. Even Leah invited some friends. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for anyone in the crowd. I wasn't wondering if Mara might walk in. I wasn't haunted. I was whole. The house is quieter again these days. Leah's preparing to move out next year. College. A big city. I help her fill out applications. We drink tea together on Sunday nights. We talk less about what we lost, and more about what we're building. I still paint. Not to survive anymore. But to say something. And sometimes I write too, just small things. Notes. Thoughts. A sentence here and there. Nothing fancy. But honest. The drawer with Mara's letters is still there. I haven't opened it in months. Maybe someday I will. But not because I miss her. Just because that part of my life deserves to be remembered with the same care I now give to what comes next. Thank you for being with us on Whisper's Secrets. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. The secrets are waiting to be revealed. See you soon.